Hey there everybody, welcome back to our ranking of the FFG competitive LCGs. Today we're looking at number 4, which is a Game of Thrones, the card game. Now, I'm going to do stuff a little bit different in this video. I'm going to go ahead and show you the mechanics that I like up front, and then we'll get into fan-made content and the duration of the game and things like that afterwards. So, and again, this is not a full tutorial. I'll link that in the video. This is just to kind of show some of those mechanics that I think are quite interesting in this game to make it unique from the other ones. Now, the first thing you're going to do in the game is you and your opponent are going to draw 7 cards. And before the game even starts, you're all going to pick, and you have gold cost up here. This one costs 5 gold, 2 gold, etc. You're going to pick 8 gold worth of cards to place down, face down on your board. And you and your opponent are going to do that. And then you're going to reveal those. And then you're going to draw back up to your 7 card hand limit there. Or not a hand limit, but just your 7 card starting hand. Now, this is a very unique design decision. I also think it is needed for this game because just like Keyforge, there's this tug of war back and forth with the power. The power is how you win the game. You got to get 15 of these power. As soon as you get 15 power, the game is over immediately, and whoever gets those 15 power wins. So there is this whole taking from your opponent and then you taking it back from them, kind of tug of war, this power going on, which can oftentimes make this game, sometimes, not oftentimes, but sometimes, especially if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have super powerful decks, this can cause the game to kind of linger a little bit longer than what you would necessarily want to because of that mechanic. This right here, I think, gives you a great jump start, this mechanic here, to kind of have that board state and get right into playing without having to build up everything from scratch. So I love that. I absolutely love that mechanic about the game. This is the only game that actually has something like that out of these FFG competitive LCGs. So right there off the rip, I think that's a great mechanic, and I enjoy that about the game. Next, you're going to during every round, you've got 7 of these plot cards. And this is another unique mechanic to this game that I find super interesting, and it provides great decision choices, not only what plot cards you put in your deck, but also which one you're going to play each round. Each of these plot cards has how much gold you're going to collect each round. Gold goes away at the end of the round, so you're getting the amount on this card plus modifiers on some of your cards have this gold token down here at the bottom there. That gives you, this one gives you +1 gold. So if I played a plot card that had 4 gold, I would then collect 5 if that card was out on the board at the start of my turn. So you've got gold value that you're going to retrieve each round. You've got an initiative, so the higher initiative gets to choose who goes first, which is very important in this game, who gets to go first in each of the stages, predominantly the combat stage. And then you've got this claim value here. The last number is a claim value. Most of them are 1 and a couple of them are 2. And whenever you're going to be doing conflicts later on, you can do an insight, a military, or a power conflict. These insight conflicts let you, if you win it, discard a card from your opponent's hand. Card advantage is important in this game. The military conflicts let you kill. Your opponent gets to pick, but you get to kill one of their units on the board, depending if you got the claim value. If you had a claim value of 2, you could kill 2, and then your opponent has to pick one. Now, if they have a bunch of dinky guys out here, then obviously that's an easier choice than if they're down to their last, 2 guys and they cost them 4 money, and now they got to pick one of those to kill. That becomes a much bigger deal. So all that's played into the equation there. And then finally, you've got the power conflict, which allows for your opponent, if they win, to steal a power from your faction card, not from the bank. If you don't have any, they can't use that. So an interesting thing that you'll see in some matches with people who know what they're doing, they'll actually let their opponent win a free power, just so when they retaliate, they can steal the power from them. So there are, at the beginning of the games, and I'm sure there's other scenarios as well, other ways, if the battle is unopposed, meaning you go in and attack on any three of those conflicts, if your opponent doesn't bring in any defenders, you get to gain 1 power if you win the conflict, which means you have more than 0 strength. Then you get to win a power from the token here. So I know I kind of skipped ahead to combat a little bit, but that said, that's how the claim value works right here. And then they have these pretty powerful effects, most of them, some more powerful than others, but definitely vital. And they're in your disposal. So at the beginning of the turn, you don't have to pick one randomly. You literally look through and pick the one you want based upon initiative, money, claim value, and special ability. You both play them face down. You reveal them, and whoever has the higher initiative gets to pick who goes first on the turn, and then you reveal the plots accordingly, or you do the ability on the plots accordingly in turn order. Then you move to the the draw phase. In this game, every turn you get to draw 2 cards to include the first. Now this is probably the point in the game. I've told you about static card draw. I don't really love it quite as much. I definitely don't like the ability to only draw 1. So drawing 2 cards is a good bit better, but it still leaves me at times being like, I have no way to draw cards, and this is what I'm left with. And not to say that isn't possible in other games, but it just feels a whole lot better the way, especially 3-1, they do the card draw. It just makes me feel better as I do it. So, but still, 2 cards isn't the biggest a deal. Again, card, as you can see with the insight where you get to trash a card if you win a battle, card advantage is something that can be a big deal. Just like the game I was playing the other night, I kept getting my cards wiped out, and next thing you know, I was drawing 2 new cards each turn with very limited options. So it can definitely come into play here in this game. Now, so after your 2 card draws, you're going to gain the money the first player is. Let's just say I was first player this time. I'm going to draw my 4 money and from the bank. And this is an interesting mechanic that I really like as well. If I'm first player, my opponent has not drawn any money from the reserve yet here, the money bank, and therefore, unless they have a 0 cost event, they cannot do anything during my turn to stop me from doing anything I want. Now, if I only spent 2 of my money as the first player, and then it goes to their turn to take their money and then marshal their players, that's what we're in the marshaling phase. Now I do have a little bit of money here, but that also means I didn't get to play, I didn't play people out on the board as well, which is a big deal. So anyway, during the marshaling phase, you get to pay money to play guys, locations give you ongoing effects like extra money or ways to exhaust them or nil them, nil the locations so that you can reduce the cost of the next player played, or any other number of abilities that these locations have. Attachments go on, like general, if you have any idea about card games, attachments basically go on these guys to give them +2 strength or some other abilities, things like that. And then you got your guys. So I'm going to pay 2 for this guy here, and I would pay 2 for this guy. Definitely considering having lower cost guys out there is valuable, because if your opponent wins a military conflict, you've got to get rid of one. So that's definitely a decision that you've got to make in this phase as well. But regardless, you play out your guys, then it goes to the other player, they gather their money, they play their guys, then you move to the conflict phase, and you're allowed to do up to 3 one of each. You can do an insight, a power, and a military conflict, and then first player does all their conflicts first, and then second player is allowed to respond, which makes you have to think about, who do I want to leave to defend? How can I kind of draw out my opponent to defend all of my stuff so they don't have anybody to attack with? All of these decisions are made because you're going to have the option to do all three of your conflicts first. You don't have to do all three, but you get, when you pass, you're basically done and you're on the defense. So now you move to the second player. They do their attacks. You defend if you can. If not, they're getting unopposed powers, power tokens, and things like that. So after the conflict phase or the combat phase, you move to the dominance phase, and you basically add up all of your gold here plus anybody's strength. Your strength is right here on the card here, your strength, and you get to add that up. Anybody standing, anybody kneeling, it's a no-go. Anybody standing, they get to add that to the pool. And if I had 7 and my opponent had 6, I get a free power for winning dominance on that round. And then you move to the standing phase, where you stand everybody up, the taxation phase, where you turn in all your money, and there's something else that I'm forgetting that you have to do in that phase, but it's pretty minuscule. And then you move back to round 1, where you choose a plot card and you start all over. Now, I would go into conflict, but there's nothing that I really need to share there as far as the mechanics. The conflict is a very straightforward conflict in this game. And that's one of the things I like about this game, and why I can say, even though I like 3 other games better, 2 of them, Dudes Warring, 2-player, card skirmish games. The other one, you'll see, if you hadn't already known, one of them's Netrunner, which is completely different. But the reason why I like this game is because a lot of the other games in this line, they have a lot more event action. And I'm not saying people can't build decks around events in this game. I haven't got that far, and I'm not saying that there isn't any event play. There's still those surprise events, straight out of the hand situation going on there throughout the game, but it is less. It's a lot less. And it changes the flow of the game to be, a lot of times you can feel somewhat confident that what you see is what you get whenever you're committing to conflicts and things like that on the board. But there's all kinds of tricks that are on this board to where you still have to do some really challenging math and assessments there to figure out what you're going to do on your turn, what guys you're going to play. If you go first, you got to deploy your guys first, which means you have no idea who your opponent's going to put out. In combat, if you go first, if they have some way to stand somebody up after they've been knelt to defend, then it can completely change the math. So there's a lot of things that can still be a surprise, but it's a different style. It's a different, it just has a different feel to it than the event play and surprises and a lot that you get in other in these other LCGs. It's just less, and I like that. It's a change of pace. The flow is this back and forth tug of war that obviously you can get in Keyforge, but I find that game to be, a little less intense than this one. It's something that I play. Keyforge would be something I would play with my son and just enjoy the flow of it. And this is something that I'm in for an hour to an hour and a half experience. And that is one of the challenges with this one. It is a bit longer playtime than some of the other ones. Not super long, but especially for beginners. I just played one the other day, even though this is terrible, because people are going to be like, what are you talking about? But my opponent, he plays a lot slower, but I've learned how to just chill and enjoy it because he's my good buddy, and I don't necessarily, and he's really good competition. But we ended up taking about 2.5 hours on one game. granted, we're still learning the cards. We're still, you know, figuring out how to play our decks. We still got probably mediocre decks. And so this tug of war action goes longer than people who know what they're doing. But still, I would say you can expect, this is one of the longer ones that you can expect to get in around an hour long. I think I can say that comfortably. That's an hour to an hour and a half game. And so that is a problem if you just want to smash games in the LCG to get your repetition in, to get better at it. This one's going to cause you to put a little bit more investment in than those. But if you're just looking to do like me and play kitchen table and just enjoy the experience, then this is a great hour-long board game, really, but it's a card game, obviously. Now, this one here has a different feel than all the rest of them, and that's why I feel like, man, this is good. I'm glad I got this in my collection. I'm glad that FFG produced this, but I can't say yet. I've only got like 6 games of this under my belt, and I've only got like 14 games or 19 games of Warhammer Conquest. And at this point, I like Warhammer. I like this one a little bit better than Warhammer Conquest, but I could see there a very decent possibility that if I put in 100 games of each of these card games, that I could possibly see Warhammer Conquest taking that over if I really got good at the strategy. I'm a little bit more frustrated with the Warhammer Conquest strategy, so it doesn't feel quite as good to me at this point. But if I ever got semi-competent at it, there is a chance. I can't say for sure because I could add more cards to the card pool on this one and it continued just to be you know, better. But these are pretty close at this point on my list, Warhammer Conquest and this one. And I still got some exploration to do before I make a final decision. But at this point, I like the theme better. I finally watched Game of Thrones, the card game, this, like at the end of this last year. I binged it, you know, and just went through it. I don't watch a lot of TV shows and I don't binge, you know, I usually, but when I do watch, find a TV show that I'm interested in, I usually go through and knock it out. And this one, I could not take my eyes off it. I wanted to know what was going to happen next. And so I finished it up. We're not going to talk about the final season of it, but the rest of the show was absolutely phenomenal. And then before I had no connection to this theme, so I wasn't even interested in getting it. But after that, since I already had most of these other LCGs, I was like, I kind of became interested. And amazingly, I found somebody who had this game on Facebook trade group, which I'll leave a link into the Facebook trade group for this. And they were selling it for $250, and they were in Tennessee, and I drove up there and got that from them. That is an amazing value. I think you're probably looking at closer to $600 to $700 for a collection of this, and even that might be underbidding it a little bit. But if you can find a lot or a complete collection of this for a good price, I highly recommend you taking advantage of it if this gives you any interest. The theme, I'm invested in the theme. I wish they could have did pictures of the actual cast of Game of Thrones, you know, like cartoon pictures, like the Star Wars LCG. Their art is, you know, their artists basically are doing artist depictions of the actual characters in the Star Wars movies. This is not based off of the show. The art is based off of just the books, and so they've basically created their own looks for all these people, which disconnects me just a hint from the theme, but I still most of the time know who all the people are. But I don't really like the art on it. Their art style in this game, there's a few, you know, some of it's good, some of it looks better than others, but overall I find the art style to be it's not as good as Warhammer Conquest, but I like the theme better. Let's just put it like that. And it's not better than the other 3 games on my list. So the only one that's better than is Warhammer Invasion. But with the theme, with this kind of change in pace, because my top 3 games, they have a totally different pace of the game. This one right here with the theme and all, I enjoy it a lot as a kind of a change of pace to be able to really be able to most of the time see what you have on the board and be able to do calculations based off of this instead of expecting 2 or 3 events to come down and completely change everything. So that's something that's got the pace of this one is a nice kind of breather. You know, it's just a little bit of a breather compared to some of the high flying ones. So if that catches your eye a little bit and interests you, I highly recommend you checking this one out. Now, like I said, I got this for $250. And I told you the price that you're probably going to pay. If you're grabbing individual parts, some of the stuff is starting to get a little rare, especially towards the end of the collection. There were 6 cycles, so 36 packs, small 60 card packs. And then there were 7 deluxe expansions, which each of those focused on an individual faction in this game or a house. And so, you know, you get the big box and probably 3% of the cards were for that faction. And then you had like 1 for each other faction, and the 1 card times 3 for each of the other factions. So because of that, I think they actually had some balancing issues as they kind of went along, especially at the beginning when the first person got their deluxe, or maybe even the first few, that you know, those factions were more relevant, and I think that kind of put a little bit of a lag and dislike in some of the people in the community. I could be speaking wrong about this, but I do believe some of that took place in this one, which is a shame. And this is the 2nd edition of the Game of Thrones. The first edition came out in that CCG model, just like Call of Cthulhu way back in the day before 2009, and then they converted it over to an LCG model for the first edition, and that ran all the way to, I believe, 2015 October. And then from October 2015 to January 2020, they were able to release all this 2nd edition stuff for the game. The card template is better to me. The art's a little better to me. There are some changing mechanics in this one and how they did things that supposedly made it potentially a little bit better than the first edition, and these are not backward compatible, so all the 2nd edition stuff cannot be used with first edition. But if you can find a first edition for super cheap, do a little bit of research, see if the changes that they made to this is actually a big deal, because I actually think in some ways first edition was more popular. In some ways, I think by the time they got to 2nd edition, people had kind of played the game so much, and there was other LCGs out there that they might have went on. I could be wrong about that as well. Leave in the comments if you know something I don't know. That said, after the game was over in 2020, there's still a group, and there's still a decent sized group. It's not as big of a group as Netrunner, but it's probably on, but there is a group, a fan-based group called GOTS, with dots and with periods in the middle of GOT. So I don't know what it stands for. I tried to look for it, I couldn't see it. But anyway, they've already released some expansions. I think their art probably looks better than FFG's. Their card template looks good. I could easily buy those cards and be happy with it. And a lot of times with these fan-made groups, and this is what people discount, a lot of times with these fan-made groups, if they got a good crew in that nonprofit organization, they'll mess around and make better cards than FFG, because they got people play testing them that really play the game competitively versus FFG. They was trying to pump out so much content across multiple games that a lot of times you get some pretty, you get some messed up stuff getting thrown in there. A lot of stuff was super underperforming. It was not that good, and then some of it was overpowered, and then you have some medium level cards. I think you're getting a much more consistent product with these fan-based groups, and you have the online experience because the problem is everybody moves on to the next thing after it's no longer officially supported by FFG, and it kind of stinks because I really think some of these folks are doing it better than FFG was. But that said, you can find a Discord group for Game of Thrones. You can find a Facebook group for Game of Thrones. You can find a Facebook group for the trading of not only, you know, actual cards and stuff, but all your kind of like merch, your bonus content, like alt arts and things like that they got from tournaments and other places, and people creating different bits and tokens for it. You can find all that over there. And the Facebook group for trading. And then, like I said, I'll leave you the link to GOT, which is the group that's continuing to make fan-made material, so you can buy their expansions if you're interested in going that route. And then they have a website where you can actually play this, and I think it's probably as good as Netrunners, if not as good right with Netrunners, as far as the automation of that website to be able to play this game online. In fact, it's my second favorite website to do so. And so there's definitely the opportunity for you to get out there and play some Game of Thrones online. If you can't find somebody local, give it a shot, test it out, go on there and say, hey, will anybody play Core Set with me? I'm sure there's plenty of people who want to introduce it to you and give you advice about it. But you can get on there and test it out before you buy. But there's just a lot of material for this game, and there's still a good fan base for it that's out there. And if you're in a bigger town, you can probably find people locally playing this one. So that said, my number 4, I think it's different. It feels different than all the rest of them. It's not my favorite, as obviously, because it's my number 4, but it's something different, and it's got a different flow to it that kind of feels just a little bit slower, and I kind of like that because a lot of it's just high flying, and it's just a nice change of pace, and it's a cool theme if you've actually watched Game of Thrones. So that's my number 4, Game of Thrones. Check it out. Let me know in the comments if you need any more information about it. I can hunt it down and get it to you, no problem. I'm a decent researcher, and for LCGs, I'm always interested in learning stuff about them. I'm kind of a historian of them. I go out the ones I'm interested in and start watching all of the matches from the tournaments back whenever they were going on, and I read articles from strategy articles and just different things that people were complaining about at the time as far as balance and all that kind of stuff. I haven't put that much work into this one because I'm trying to not learn too much about it, because my friend, like I said, I got so far into Netrunner, he really doesn't want to play it with me anymore, because even though I'm not great at it, I've put so much work into it. I'm light years ahead of him, who would just come over and play it, you know, every few weeks with me for a couple of games. So I'm trying to keep this one to be something, and he enjoys this one. So I'm trying to keep this one to be something we can kind of grow together on, and I just take it slow on this one. So that's why I haven't got that much information on this one versus the rest of them. But going forward on the next 3, I'll definitely have more concrete information for you and more you know, insight into them, because I've put a lot more work into the research on the next 3 games. So that said, my number 4, I've already said that, Game of Thrones. We'll catch you next time.